Yeah. So then I would go and in my sketchbook, I would try and do funny characters as well in different poses. That allowed me to get a job, my first animation job at Film Roman, who are the people that do Simpsons. They also at the time were doing Garfield. That was the first show I ever worked on. Got to work on a couple other shows, Bobby's World, Sea Bear and Jamal, Felix the Cat. And that led to me working at Nickelodeon, which is the greatest place in the world to work. It's really a fantastic studio. And where I finally got to work on a show called Fairly Odd Parents. My job on Fairly Odd Parents was an art director and producer. And as art director, I was in charge of what everything looked like. All the designs, if we did like a sequence where it was in the 70s, everybody was hippies, or the 60s, everybody was hippies, I had to figure out what colors would be appropriate. If we did a Star Wars parody, I had to figure out, what's Timmy Turner going to look like as Luke Skywalker? Or Spider-Man, what's Timmy Turner going to look like as Spider-Man? And there's one character in here, his name is Elmer. Do you know Elmer? You seen it? And he has a bump on his face. It's called a boil, kind of like a big pimple. And it's called a boil. And the creator of the show, Butch Hartman, he actually gave the bump a name called Bob. Bob Boyle. It's named after me. So he was kind of making fun of me, but I was honored to be in a cartoon. That's a bump. I also got to work on a show called Danny Phantom, which was another fun show to work on. And at that time, Nick Jr. was asking if anyone had any ideas for preschool shows. And I thought, yeah, I do you have any ideas? Yes, I do have ideas. I had an idea. My young niece at the time, she would come up with stories, and she's probably younger than you, about your age. She would come up with stories, and she'd ask me to draw them out for her. So there was one story I remembered called The Tale of Flopsy, Mopsy, and Ted. And you can see it kind of looks like Wubbsy, Widget, and Walden from Wow Wow Wubbsy. Well, I drew out this little story for her, in just a little comic strip, and I took it to Nickelodeon. I developed it a little bit more, did a few drawings, came up with a story for Mopsy. I took it to Nick Jr. I was all excited. Yeah, I'm going to do a show, and I showed it to him. They said no. They didn't like it as much as I liked it. But I did not give up. I went and I developed it some more. I added color to it. I started fleshing out the characters a little bit more, what their world would look like. It started looking more and more like Wubbsy does now. Did a little page on every one of the characters that describes who they are. And I took it back to Nick Jr. This is the president of Nick Jr. I was so excited. I'm like, whoa, she didn't know. She wasn't sure. So she came out to Los Angeles and she met with me. We had an interview. She's talking to me in my office. This is my office at Nickelodeon. And there's cool toys everywhere. And she's talking to me, but she's not even looking. She's looking past me and over me. And it's like, oh, this is the worst interview I've ever had in my life. She's not even paying attention to me. She's not listening to what I say. I was like, I'm never going to get this show. You know what she said? Oh, there's some more pictures of toys. She said yes. Do you know why she said yes? Because all the toys. She said, if you can make a show that's as cool as your office, then we should do it. So my advice to you, if you ever get an office, fill it with cool toys.